Here is Matt Walsh to talk to us about porn.
If you recoil in horror at the very thought of regulating or banning porn, it's because you have so totally accepted the left's premise on pornography and probably on so many other issues as well.
Okay, so let's talk about a couple things here. Let's go ahead and talk about the important problem with what Matt is bringing up here. First of all, what do you mean by porn regulation? Could you define porn regulation for me? What regulations are you talking about? If we are trying to regulate porn in that, say, put a regulation up a lot in the way that like COPPA restricts YouTube, where if you find that a particular actress has been human trafficked, then that content is to be removed from the site and the site is to be fined for showcasing that content. Or rather that the user who uploaded that content should be tracked down so that information on the person can be dealt with, then yeah, that's something that I agree with. Yeah, you should be able to take a look and see if we have evidence that a person has been human trafficked, because that is a problem. Then yeah, by all means. But elsewise, what other types of regulations are you going to work with? What regulations are you going to try to impose? Is it going to be there's certain types of porn that we just won't allow for? Because at that point, there's people who have kinks, and those kinks aren't going away, and it seems very anti-capitalist to get rid of niche markets. And don't know female ejaculation exists, and many more are reluctant to admit they know. Why would they be reluctant to admit that they satisfy their partners? Like, why would that be a problem for someone? Just admitting that you as a person have made your partner happy. Like, that feels kind of weird, right? Like, aha! I know how to satisfy women. That makes me bad somehow. According to some people, yes. No, that just sounds weird.
You don't even know it. And that's the case if a classic conservative argument about obscenity scandalizes and shocks you. It's not just that conservatives have abandoned their own positions, it's that now conservatives are actually offended by conservative positions on things. That's how thoroughly the left has won. The left has won so thoroughly that, like I said, on common good, I was talking about common good. Someone told me that the idea of the common good is jargon. This is a conservative. So it's just jargon. The very concept.
So wait, Matt Walsh is saying that conservatives aren't making any sense, and that is news to him. I guess since he's also a conservative, it wouldn't be news. But okay, so let's pick apart what's been said so far. So he said that the problems with pornography must be obscenity, right? Because that's what he's framed the conversation around thus far. Okay, and I can understand calling something obscene material. That's understandable, just from a rhetorical stance. But the question, though, becomes if you're a First Amendmenter, you're a true freedom of speech believer, is not pornography or the ability to record having sex in any way, shape, or form, is that not just an expression of freedom of speech? Like it's some type of expression there. Like literally, this is a nation founded on the idea of being free. I doubt that his arguments are actually pro-freedom. That feels weird to me. Also, hold on, before I pop out completely from that side of things, I wanted to say that we just got another super chat in, and that was from Marcelex for $5, and I can't actually read what it said. There we go. Here's an empty insult. I mean, I hope Matt Walsh would shove garlic up his foreskin in Minecraft. Step on a Minecraft in landmine. Whew. Also, we received from Arctic Fox William $36.21, donating this amount of money as a nod to every furry's favorite porn site. In all seriousness, I'm glad to have a chance to watch as I've been busy working. Thank you for giving me so much wonderful content. I hope this helps. Well, Arctic Fox, it does help, considering that is just about enough to pick up a pizza for everybody in the house. Not counting the fact that it also is part of the funding that's going towards bills. So, thank you very much for that. All right. Matt Walsh, continue to serenade me with your BS.
Good is now jargon. This is relativism. This is nihilism and relativism, and it has infiltrated conservatism in a major way.
Okay, so actually, hold on. There's an important thing that he also just did here. When somebody says something's jargon, that is not automatically dismissal, right? So if you and I are having a conversation about Magic the Gathering, right? And when I say, "Hey, what's your mana dork?" and you say Lawnmower Elves, we are using jargon. That's all jargon. Mana dork is a Magic the Gathering term. Lawnmower Elves is a expression to make fun of one of the most common mana dorks in the game, Lawnmower Elves. So, I say, "What's your mana dork?" and you say Lawnmower Elves. Nobody outside of the conversation we're having knows what we're talking about. Right? But everything we've said has substance. Every single thing that has been said in this conversation has substance to it. Jargon or no. Simply pointing out that someone is engaging in a conversation using jargon, common good in political theory is jargon, BT dubs, is not a dismissal of the point. It's not a dismissal of the conversation. It's not a dismissal of anything that's been said. It's simply pointing out that this is a word that doesn't mean anything to people outside of this conversation who are not used to having this conversation. But if we're talking about common good and political discourse, we are in fact engaging in jargon. Common good for most people is just going to be, to the benefit of all. But it might be more technical depending on who is saying it and what conversation they're having it in. Again, dismissal based on jargon means nothing. Matt is really quiet. Can you turn up the video volume? I can turn it up a little bit. Here. This should work.
When conservatives decided that government should not be used to advance the good, when that happened, and it wasn't at one point that it happened, but over the course of decades, but that is when conservatism became limp, shallow, and ineffectual.
So, wait a minute. Isn't the primary argument of conservatism that the good is advanced by the populace, not by the government, and that because of that fact, the government must be lessened? Like, isn't that supposed to be the conservative argument, small government? Not that the government can provide more good or can do more for the common good, but that the government as an institution needs to be cut down. This is why they're usually for lower taxes, so that there's less funding going into the government. That doesn't sound like a fully conservative argument to me. That doesn't. That's very libertarian. That's not super conservative. Wait a minute, but I can't say those things because those were jargon. They can now be dismissed based on them being jargon. Apparently.
Also divorcing itself from its own intellectual history.
Intellectual history. That's a fun word to use when we're talking about conservatism. So does everybody here actually know what the history of conservative thought is? Like, the actual origins of conservatism? Because, whoo boy. Let's see. Who here knows? You activated my trap card. Jargon dismissal. Maintain the status quo. It is in a way maintain the status quo, but why? What was the original reason to maintain the status quo? Okay, so for those who don't know, and this is going to be a very, very light dissertation on this. This is not one of my edited videos. I'm not going into a lot of detail, but I will, if you guys want, go into detail, as explicit as I can, about the history of conservatism. But conservative thought, at least where we've been able to trace the roots of conservative thoughts. Also, Original Spaz says some money for derailing your stream. Thank you very much for the $3.50 donation. But the history of conservative thought begins in and around France, where what we would consider the upper middle class there, granted, this was back in more feudalistic periods, so upper middle class also meant that you had a lot of land. And again, insofar as we could identify people as upper middle class. But these sub-nobles, as it were, wanted to figure out a way to maintain the little bit of power they had been able to eke out in the world for them and their families. What was the best way for them to maintain that power? Well, by maintaining the power of the monarchy. If you maintain the power of the monarchy, then everybody else would be able to maintain their power as well. So, that maintenance of power, that status quo, became what needed to be achieved. Now, why was this important to them? Well, if the main central power is always there with its fist, then there's always going to be something else for people to go after. There's always going to be something for the working class, as it were, to go after that is not you, not your upper middle class self. The government is going to be the enemy. They're going to go there, and that in turn allows the monarchy to strengthen itself, thus ensuring the power of the monarchy. So when we hear from people that, oh, I don't understand why conservatives are always in favor of like billionaires and like these people who have established oligarchical power, I don't understand why that they do this. Do they think that one day they're going to be this rich? No. Conservative thought began not as a way of trying to figure out how to maintain power so that one day when you attain that power, it is well protected. It was to maintain the little bit of power you already had. That's where it originated from. So when you are encountering conservative arguments that are trying to keep billionaires as billionaires, that are trying to keep the government as the institution that it is right now, that are trying to keep, almost what we would consider more oligarchical as opposed to democratic leadership, because realistically corporations have a lot more power than they should, especially where lobbying is concerned. Why do those arguments get pushed through so much by conservatives? If they're adhering to classical conservative thought, it was to maintain the power of the monarchy, so that if the monarchy had 80% of the power, they could keep that 1% of the power that they got. They could keep that 2% of the power that they got. That tiny bit of power that they had managed to attain could be maintained for them and their families going forward. This also, conversely, if you maintain the power of the monarchy, guess who maintains a position of no power? Your bottom working class. So that when you adhere to classical conservative thought, you can't really lift people out of the working class that easily, at least not on a systemic level. Your working class is going to continue to be oppressed because it maintains that power in the monarchy, therefore maintaining the little bit of power you've managed to eke out in the world. So, there. Tiny bit, very small dissertation on how conservative thought began in France and how maybe if you look at that, you can see how that's been adapted a little more for conservative thought in the present day. That said, let's continue with Matt Walsh now that we've gotten through that. I don't even remember why I was so worried about that at all. I don't remember what brought that to mind. But let's continue with Matt Walsh and talking about porn.
And that is why the left always wins, because the right has abdicated, has run.
This is why the left always wins, according to Matt Walsh, except the left hasn't always won. There are still states that where creationism is trying to be pushed back into school. That's conservative Christians are a thing. More conservative Christians than there are Democratic Christians. than there are progressive Christians. Trump is in power. That's not a win for the left. I'm sorry. Our Supreme Court is conservatively owned right now. That's not a win for the left either. None of that is a win for the left. However, this ties in very well with some of the ways in which fascism is borne out, how it properly gains its power, how it properly works its rhetoric. So, one of the things that is very important for fascist ideology, insofar as you can even say it has an ideology of any substance, one of the important things is to victimize yourself. Because when you victimize yourself, it becomes very, very easy for people to empathize with your plight when you're a victim. So, when people on the right like this can say the left is always winning, they're dominating everything, they've got a stone grip on the media, they've got a stone grip on academia, all these institutions, they're owned by the left, even though the actual real power is in their hands. When they do this, they get to create a victim narrative about themselves, and then people can rally behind that victim narrative. And then, once you have that victim narrative built up, guess what you get? Who here has seen the footage from the Unite the Right rally? Who here has seen the footage of people screaming at the top of their lungs with tiki torches, "You will not replace us, you will not replace us"? How do you get to that point without feeling like you're a victim of a possible great replacement? That victim mentality is an important aspect of the early beginnings of fascism, is to make people feel like they're victims and that the ideology that you're trying to push forward is the only way to save them from those who victimized them. So, maybe fun context for everybody in the chat.
Runaway has surrendered. My friend Josh Hammer, who also works at Daily Wire, writes great pieces every day. He made the point last night that the right has almost entirely abandoned moral arguments and arguments rooted in justice. The right has almost completely stopped making those arguments and ceded all of that to the left. The left makes those arguments all the time.
It is almost as if you've lost the arguments. Like, if I say that guillotines for the poor is bad, and you say that no, they're enemies of the state, they must be killed, but over time we've realized that there's just so many times where innocent people have been hit by those guillotines that no, guillotines for the poor is not a good idea. Maybe you shouldn't be doing this. And when you lose that argument over and over and over and over again, there's two things you can do. You can either A, admit that it was a shitty argument and that maybe you shouldn't have been doing it, or B, B, the other thing you can do is then play victim. Scream and yell at the top of your lungs, the left is oppressing me. And now when you get to play victim, now it changes the narrative to where you guys are the victims who can scream and yell with tiki torches that the left should not replace us, or the other people should not replace us, because welcome to the victim narrative. Welcome how it works. Let's see here. Frustrated. Why did we hide Vile Bird? I'm confused as to why they were hidden. Okay. Fair enough. I figured it was an accident. I just noticed it in the chat and was confused.
And they always win. They always win because nobody opposes them. They're just running up and down the football.
Wait, no, people did oppose. Wait, what? The left doesn't face opposition, especially not in moral arguments? When did this happen? When did this happen? What? When did this magical circumstance that I have not encountered of the left just not being able to be part of this discourse in this way? When did this happen? That's the first I've heard of this. It's the first time this has come up in my mind. My brain meats haven't processed this information before.
Football field, scoring touchdowns, and there's no defense on the field to stop them. They say we should do this or that because it's right and it's just. And these weak, emasculated conservatives are sitting off in a corner going, oh, we don't want to legislate morality, so we're not going to chime in here. Hey, guys, let's not legislate morality. No, we don't want to do that. That's wrong. We shouldn't do that.
Maybe you should talk about the actual porn thing, right? Like, you're being very vague right now, but you haven't actually talked about the porn thing, the thing that your video is supposed to be talking about.
And then they try to make all their arguments based on economy or something like that, or even worse, based on rights divorced from the good. And
so wait, is it... He does understand that, technically speaking, conservatism is almost entirely about the economy, right? Like, other things stem from that, yes, but generally speaking, your conservatives are capitalists, and this is an economical stance. Now, there are moral sides to this, and usually that's based on stuff like Christianity, but if you've lost the moral arguments because you realize that they're all bullshit, then all you have left is your economical arguments at that point. Like, that's all you've got. And even those are shit, but we'll continue on.
And they lose every damned time because their arguments are weak and timid and toothless and grounded in nothing. If you've noticed that you're a conservative and you always lose every argument, this is why.
Could it actually be that you're losing the argument as conservative because you're wrong? Could that potentially be what's going on here, Matt? Like, is it, insofar as you can even find most conservatives who will actually acquiesce that they've lost an argument, which I haven't seen happen that much, but when you can actually get one to admit that they've lost an argument, is it because you didn't come in aggressively enough? Is it because you didn't, like, fight hard enough? Is it because you weren't conservative enough? I'm confused. Usually when you lose an argument, it is because either your rhetoric was lacking or you were actually wrong. And you seem to be saying that it's always the rhetoric. It's never that they're actually wrong. The conservatives are right by default, and when they lose, it's because their rhetoric wasn't up to snuff. Okay. Azrael has donated $5 from an article in 2018. The research suggests that when intolerant white people fear democracy may benefit marginalized people, they abandon their commitment to democracy. That seems to be the case, though I think it's less to do with white people in general and more to do with whichever set of people in whichever culture is used to maintaining power. In this country, it is white people, yes. But in other countries, it is whatever ethnicity is prominent there, too. Or whichever ones have power in the world right now. And as it turns out, the strongest empires in the world right now are also fairly white. Insofar as we can even call white a race. I'm of the opinion that it's a skin color, not a race. And even race is a fucking misnomer. So, I'm suddenly reminded of the scene from Star Wars Episode 3 where Obi-Wan and Vader are fighting. And he's just yelling at him, I'm an ally of the Republic to democracy. Nightbot is telling everybody if you want to support, use the Streamlabs link.
Because your arguments are terrible and have no grounding. Okay, so that's the first objection. Objection number 2. In fact, okay, let's go to the next objection. I just mentioned it. Legislate morality. Oh, we shouldn't legislate morality. We now, I keep going back to this, but I don't mean to harp on it, but just the fact that conservatives are now saying don't legislate morality, this stupid bumper sticker slogan that you hear from conservatives now, I mean, it is so depressing.
Well, it might be a little depressing, but realistically, not legislating morality makes sense within the conservative argument if you accept not the classical conservative position of maintaining hierarchical power, but the conservative arguments of trying to diminish governmental control, diminish governmental size. Then, yeah, not legislating morality would be literally preventing the government from having control in that aspect, in that set of society. That is in fact a modern conservative position. Yes. You're right, Matt. Congratulations. You win a gold star. You get a cookie.
Of course we legislate morality. What are you talking about? Of course we do. Everything that is illegal because we have decided that it's wrong.
Thank you for saying we have decided, because that would have been really awkward if you said it's illegal because it's wrong. That's an awkward slide to just kind of jump on.
So every law we make, every single law we make is based on a moral conception. We can be wrong, okay? We have decided in this society that it's good, in fact, that it would be evil to stop women from killing their babies, and thus it is legal for them to kill the babies. So we can be wrong with our moral conceptions, but what I'm establishing here is that there is no such thing as not legislating morality. That is a thing that doesn't exist ever, anywhere. If a thing is illegal, it is because we have decided, or the government's decided, that it's wrong.
So my one question to Matt here would be, has he actually decided to bring up any examples of people engaging in this type of argumentation? Like, is that a thing that we have seen here, where he's got an idea of a conservative in his head that is not living up to his ideal his Ubermensch conservative, as it would be. He's not got a conservative in his head living up to the ideals that he wants it to, but he doesn't actually talk about any specific arguments that somebody has said. He doesn't cite someone. And that feels kind of strange. In fact, kind of really strange. But, Relax says, it's illegal for me to hunt in Virginia with more than about 3 rounds in my gun. Is it immoral? So 3 rounds in your gun, but as many rounds as you can fit in your pocket, am I right? That's the way around that one, I think.
If something is not just wrong, but evil, morally evil. If something is not morally evil, then it shouldn't be illegal. Simple as that.
Oh. Okay. Right. You're right. Let's talk about the war on drugs. Let's do that. Let's have a chat about the war on drugs. Let's talk about slavery. Let's talk about pornography. Let's talk about all these things that conservatives classically have argued against throughout the history of this nation. But why is Nightbot double spamming? That's weird. Undead Slayer says, isn't bodily autonomy only moral because the inverse leads to an infinite regress, i.e. people arguing back and forth that they are entitled to the other's body? Basically, it's not that it's moral because of that, but to argue that bodily autonomy is immoral does lead to an infinite loop where we have to then decide, well, which life do we value more? The established life that lives in the world right now, or the potential life that has not yet entered the world? I just now noticed the Nightbot 2-time spam. This is the first time I've seen it. Says I probably have 2 sessions of Nightbot running. I shouldn't have 2 sessions of Nightbot running. That's news to me. I don't think I do. Hold on. Let me see. Nightbot. Let's see if Nightbot is running. Let's see if it's on. Let's see if it is screwing up and blowing everything in the stream to bits. I can't actually see Nightbot. Do 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 do. Yeah, looks like everything's running as normal. As far as I can tell. But no, where has the Nightbot gone?
There is no morally good thing that should ever be illegal. Now, there are morally evil things that shouldn't necessarily be illegal.
Like abortion.
Because you have to take into consideration many different factors. Like, how do you
Like abortion.
enforce it? Yeah, what would that entail? Degrees of things, and who's affected. You do weigh all of these things.
Yeah, that's how we got to the present case on abortion.
But my point is, the only reason why anything is ever a candidate for being illegal is that it's evil. According to at least the people in power. So this don't legislate morality thing, I just wish everyone would stop saying it. Because when you say that, you reveal that you have no idea why laws even exist.
Speaking of having no idea about things, Matt, we spent 6 minutes and 21 seconds in a video that the Daily Wire clipped and called it porn should be regulated like alcohol or tobacco, but didn't cite anything. You didn't cite a source. You didn't cite an argument. You didn't even cite who the hypothetical conservative you were talking about in the entire thing was. You gave us nothing. That there was no actual conversation about porn here. Just arguing that conservatives weren't conservative enough for you. What? Matt, this is not how we YouTube. This is not how we YouTube with 1.78 million subs. No. Okay.